Hello, Paradise Panther artists. My name is Mrs. Telfer, and I'm excited to be with you today to tell you about our next master artist, Georgia O'Keeffe. Born in 1887, Georgia was an American artist who painted nature in a way that showed how it made her feel. She is best known for her close-up, large-scale paintings of flowers and desert landscapes. So let's find out how Georgia played such an important role in the development of modern art in America, and how she is considered a pioneer in the art world today. Here we go, artists. Georgia O'Keeffe was a very popular and famous American artist. People wanted to know all about her life and about her art. So she agreed to be interviewed, and that interview was recorded. You will hear parts of it today. Are you ready to hear all about Georgia O'Keeffe in her own voice and words? She was in her 90s when this interview was done, so her voice is not always loud and strong. But if you listen very carefully, you will be able to understand her. As we look at her paintings, listen carefully to find out what O'Keeffe sees in her mind.
I can see shapes. It's as if my mind creates shapes that I don't know about. I can't say it any other way. That I get this shape in my head. And sometimes I know what it comes from and sometimes I don't. And I think with myself that there are a few shapes that I have repeated a number of times during my life, and I haven't known I was repeating them until after I had done it.
Georgia O'Keeffe saw shapes in her mind. And Georgia had the talent to beautifully turn those shapes into works of art, like you just saw. Here, we can't easily tell what Georgia's shapes are. The shapes we see are not realistic. There is an art word that describes O'Keeffe's way of painting. When things are not realistic, it is an abstract work of art. It doesn't look like a real thing. Abstract art invites us to use our imaginations and feelings. Now, without using your voice, I would like you to raise your hand if you have ever collected something. Raise your hand and your teacher will call on you. Thank you. I'm sure there are many special collections from your classmates who have just shared. You can put your hands down now. This was one of the things that Georgia collected. She collected artificial flowers. She wanted to use them so that she could draw and paint them. Let's remember, though, that O'Keeffe's paintings were abstract. So her painting of this flower would not look just like the real thing. I want you to pretend that you brought your special camera to school today to photograph this flower. Your camera has a powerful zoom lens that brings you closer and closer to the flower. You see less and less of the flower as it is magnified. Let's all pretend to turn our zoom lens on now and tell me what you see of this flower through your camera lens. We would see just the petals and the center of the flower if we zoomed in. Georgia looked at her collection of flowers as if she had a zoom lens as part of her eyes. She zoomed in on a flower and painted it very large. This painting reminds me of a flower. But I'm wondering, why did O'Keeffe scale up her flowers to be so large? Let's listen as she tells us why.
There was a collection of paintings in New York that I went to see every once in a while, and they had a new painting, but it was a small picture. It was about 20 by 16 maybe, but the flower was beautifully painted, and I thought, now, if I would paint that flower, just that flower, the size it is, nobody would ever look at it. But if I enjoy the flower and I would paint it, I'm going to paint it big so they will have to look at it.
Georgia painted the flowers so big so that people would notice them. She became very famous for her flower paintings. Here we see another beautiful painting by O'Keeffe. Besides the shapes in these paintings, the color also catches your attention. Look carefully and you can see more than one color of blue in this painting. We also can see several colors of green, too. We call those different colors of blue and green values of color. Values of a color can go from very light to very dark. Let's find out how O'Keeffe created all of these color values. Georgia would add black to a color to make it darker. Black added to a color makes a shade of that color. And she would add white to a color to make it lighter. White added to a color makes a tint of that color. Now I want you to picture in your mind, like Georgia O'Keeffe, a painting of brown hills with so many values of brown, it's impossible to even count them. And the result is a rich, interesting painting that captures the beauty of nature. Let's see if your picture in your mind looks anything like what O'Keeffe painted. Let's experiment with shades and tints so that you really understand this art concept. Here we see many values of brown. Look at this first value of brown right here. Here we see a tint where white has been added to the brown. Now look at this value of brown. Here we see a shade because black has been added to the brown. Well done! Now you will know how to create your own tints and shades for your art activity. Georgia O'Keeffe was born and lived in the United States for her entire life. She lived in New York for many years, but she preferred another part of America. Her favorite place was a world completely different from New York, and that's where she painted these beautiful hills. Let's listen as she tells you all about her favorite place.
When I got to New Mexico, that was mine. As soon as I saw it, that was my country. I'd never seen anything like it before, but it fitted to me exactly. Like something that's in the air. It's just different. The sky is different. The stars are different. The wind is different. I shouldn't say too much about this because other people may get interested, and I don't want them interested.
Georgia O'Keeffe lived in the United States. Her favorite place to visit and to live was the state of New Mexico. New Mexico is mostly desert. It is hot and dry with little rain. Georgia would hike all over the hills and desert and set up her easel and paint until the daylight ran out. The hills in this painting are in the background. The big black shape in the foreground is not a window, it is a cross. Georgia enjoyed painting landscapes of the New Mexico hills, making them very colorful and showing many shades and tints. However, because her paintings were abstract, the hills were not really that colorful in real life, and there weren't really giant flowers floating in the sky. Without using your voice, raise your hand if you have a pet dog. Thank you. You can put your hands down now. Georgia loved dogs and had several as pets in New Mexico. The dog in the photo was named Jingo. Now look carefully at the large photo on the left. We can find Georgia and two of her dogs, one right here and the other right here. They look like small, dark bushes. She loved taking her dogs for long walks near her home. Remember I told you Georgia liked to collect things, such as artificial silk flowers? Well, she had another collection too, a very unusual one. I bet you have never heard of this kind of collection before. Let me show you. Georgia collected bones. As she hiked across the hills and the desert with her dogs, she would pick up the animal bones she found. I wonder if Jingo ever tried to bury the bones that she found. Georgia O'Keeffe liked the shapes of the bones she collected. She loved the beautiful shapes in the skulls and the bones and thought they were very lively. Look at this hip bone of a cow as Georgia did, noticing the shapes created against the sky. We can see the shades and tints of the blue sky through the holes in the bone. This would be a very interesting view to wake up to in your backyard each morning. Georgia never tired of the view from her house or painting it over and over again. After hearing her voice and seeing her paintings, now let's see another photograph of Georgia O'Keeffe. She was married to a famous photographer who took hundreds of pictures of her. I wonder if she enjoyed posing for him. Georgia said it drove her crazy to sit still for photographs. I bet some of you have felt like that when you had your picture taken. We can see that Georgia is painting flowers here. I bet she won't paint it just the size that it is. Instead, she will probably make the flower very large. Great job, artists, learning about one of the most influential female artists in American history. I bet you will never look at a flower the same after seeing Georgia's large, close-up flower paintings. In your art activity, you will be able to apply your new knowledge of color values and shading. But I wonder if you will be creating flowers, landscapes, or bones. You will just have to wait and find out. Have a great day, Paradise Panther artists, and I will see you next time.